VLR.
Welcome to the Saturday Night Cigar Lounge.
Actually pretty warm for December, beginning of January. Saturday night here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which means it's perfect to go out and, well, have a cigar, which is what I did earlier today. This is Saturday Night Cigar Lounge here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. I am your host, Taylor, and I'm very, very happy to have Jason Pye from United Liberty here. Jason, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am good. What's it like in Georgia tonight?
Rainy, 40 degrees. Yeah, not that great.
And then coming in from the nation's capital, very excited for this. It's Gabriel Maller from Ace of Spades. Gabriel, how are you?
Hey Taylor, doing good.
Good. Thanks to both of y'all for taking time out of your Saturday nights to be here. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Boy, I wish I could step out for a cigar. It's cold and rainy here.
I gotta ask, what do you prefer, Gabriel?
I like a little the Macanudo Portofino. Actually, is probably my easy, cigar of choice.
I'm a big fan of the CAO Brasilias, which
Gurkha. Gurkha.
What do you mean?
I like Gurkhas, man, or
okay.
or an actual Cuban Cohiba. Those are.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. Well, actually, you can go wrong. Believe it or not, one of the worst cigars I ever had was a Cohiba from Cuba.
Ah.
It just wasn't rolled correctly.
Oh, okay. Mine brought me one home. One of those trips out overseas, and I think that may have been the best cigar I've ever had. I know that's probably very typical of anyone who's had a Cuban cigar. But that was the best. That was truly one of the best I've had, though.
Yeah. No, something. I had a Romeo y Julieta Churchill and Tubos, and it was from Cuba, and it was fantastic. I mean, they have some really, really. If you can find a good cigar from Cuba, you are golden. Although currently in my possession are, as I said, the Brasilia, as well as the I have an Afuente Añejo.
Yeah.
Which, Extra Viejo. Excuse me, the Añejo Extra Viejo.
I only have one Gurkha left in my humidor, and I'm too lazy to get up and go look and see what kind it is. So.
Well, it helps when I have it just right on my desk. So, the other thing that I happen to have right on my desk is a copy of the Constitution. And the Fourth Amendment, which is what we're going to be discussing tonight. Well, sort of. We're going to be discussing NSA spying tonight, but I want to read the Fourth Amendment first because, I happen to like the Bill of Rights. I like the entire Constitution. And I like the Bill of Rights because it's something that, is, well, important to look at. And important to figure out and to say, okay, whether this is an important, how important something is or not. And I know it's here in this Cato one somewhere. I know they didn't get rid of it. Well, the fact that I can't find it suggests that it's probably a good idea that I just skip that because It's something. It's good for us to actually just go and take a look at the NSA spying, because the biggest thing that we ran into obviously was the decision by a New York federal judge yesterday, to say that this was this was legal, that that NSA spying was legal, and so I wanted some legal commentary. Gabriel, am I getting that right? Legal commentary?
Legal commentary, yeah.
I wanted some legal commentary. That's why Gabriel's here. He's a lawyer. And Jason is one of the biggest... Not saying that Gabriel isn't a liberty supporter, but Jason is much, much smarter than I am when it comes to a lot of stuff, and that's why he's here. Plus...
your check's in the mail.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Remember, it is TAYLOR.
Gotcha.
But I do want to start with Gabriel. Actually, what was kind of you said in a tweet earlier that you were going to be defending the NSA spying. What did you kind of see when you looked at this opinion?
Well, I guess the most important thing I guess would start with saying is that the judge found the NSA metadata. They're talking about the phone metadata collection program, and the judge found that it was constitutional. What the judge didn't examine, which none of the courts have, is whether or not it was lawful under statute. In other words, one of the objections to these programs is that Congress didn't really intend for the NSA to do this. But none of the courts are reaching that question. That's all tucked away in the secret courts, the FISA court. So that wasn't an issue. The only issue for the court here was the juicy issue, of course. Under the Fourth Amendment, is phone metadata collection constitutional? And this court found that it was, and another court 2 weeks ago found that it wasn't. So we've got the two competing decisions. I happen to come down pretty firmly on the side of the most recent decision, which found that it was constitutional under the Fourth Amendment. But I understand it's an issue of great interest to people because, of course, this phone metadata, I mean, all of us are walking around with cell phones attached to our hips all the time. So we want to know, okay, what is the government doing with this information? And are we safe with having the government having that information?
The Fourth Amendment, which says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Thank you, Cato Institute, for that. You put him in the very back. Very smart. Jason Pye, what do you think?
Well, I think Richard Leon got it right more than Judge William Pauley. Pauley's decision, it's based on the 1978 court decision, Smith versus Maryland, that doesn't indicate what the NSA is doing. I mean, the technology in the late 70s is nowhere near in the court technology. We're in the late 21st century. And the Fourth Amendment applies today. Obviously, these records remaining in the hands of a third party is what they're, that's how they get their loophole and how they get around.
And we are having a little bit of a technical issue with Jason. Give us just a second. We will get him right back. But he was describing the situation, or the decision in Maryland. Is that correct, Jason? The decision in Maryland?
Yeah, Smith versus Maryland. Like I was saying, I got cut off. Smith versus I completely lost my train of thought right now. But basically, that's their loophole, the third party loophole, where they say they can go in and get records. Customers rely on their private, even though they're trusting these third parties. I don't think would have signed those rights to privacy had they known the government was going to go in and take that records, things that they don't need, things that even James Sensenbrenner, who wrote the Patriot Act, who introduced it in Congress, he equates the NSA's arguments for collecting this metadata as saying that the government, the NSA, believes they need a haystack to find the needle. And the fact they're collecting this information, which is not relevant to the solving actual terrorist plots, it's really concerning, and it is a blatant violation of people's privacy. They're not. The Patriot Act, Section 250 Patriot Act, very explicitly says only tangible things relating to an investigation of terrorist activity. To say that virtually every American cell phone is that's saying that we're all suspects. We're all suspects now.
Well, this is one of those things. Taylor, this is one of those things where, again, I go back to the text of the Constitution, which is very clear, which is what you just read of the Fourth Amendment, and it begins the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures, etc., shall not be violated. But there's a very key word there, and that is their persons, their houses, their papers, and their effects. And I think Jason did put his finger on it. One of these things was, well, when I have my information in a third party's hands, do I any longer have an interest in it, or a protected interest in keeping that information private? And the answer is generally, the courts have answered that question saying no. I think the easiest way to look at it is an analogy. Say I'm a jewel thief, and I have stolen some jewels, and I go to a pawn shop, and I pawn them there. And a week later, police officer is canvassing local pawn shops, looking for these jewels, sees them sitting on the shelf and says, "Hey, pawn shop owner, can you tell me about anything about this guy with the jewels?" And the pawn shop owner says, "Yes, officer, I wrote down a receipt. I have a copy of the receipt. And here, do you want it?" And he gives it to the police officer. None of us would say that I have a protected, Fourth Amendment interest in the content of that receipt. I didn't create it. I didn't keep it. It was literally someone engaged in non-private activity. And that is not protected in the first place. That's not my person, my house, my paper, my effect. That was the pawn shop owner's paper or effect. And so that's kind of the analogy I draw to these NSA cases. We are contracting with a third party, the phone companies, and they're creating these records, they're keeping them, and when the government comes calling, asking for one with a 215 order, which is basically a subpoena, they're saying, sure, here, have it. And the judges, that's what the two judges in these cases were faced with deciding. First of all, is this non-private activity even something that we, beyond the question of whether we have a reasonable expectation of privacy, is this even private activity is the first question we should be asking. And the answer, of course, is no. This is very public activity. It is non-private in nature. So, of course, it shouldn't be protected under the Fourth Amendment. And that's one of those, if you live out there in the public world, the government's going to be able to see and hear about what you do. For me, in particular, I don't understand a lot where people would like the government to turn a blind eye to acts that are not private. I think we see that a lot these days, where people kind of suggest that if they can do stuff that is essentially non-private, but then come back at the government and say, "Oh no, I'm protected. The Fourth Amendment says you have to pretend not to see that or not to hear that." And I don't.
I understand where you're coming from that, and that's something that I've had debates with people before regarding this issue, in discussing this issue. And I kind of want to go back and look at something that the Washington Times wrote in 2007, where they said President Bush signed a little notice statement last month asserting the U.S. authority to open U.S. mail without judicial warrants in emergencies or foreign intelligence cases, prompting warnings yesterday from Democrats and privacy advocates that the administration is attempting to circumvent legal restrictions on power. When it comes to mail, don't they need a warrant to open mail?
Ordinarily, yeah, they would.
So how is that different when it comes to phone calls, when it comes to, say, emails? How is that different?
Well, let's be very clear about the phone metadata program, about what information they're allowed to look at. What is phone metadata in the first place, and what information they're not. They're not allowed to know the name of the person attached to the phone number, their address, their financial information,